Yeah, so we have completed basically, right? Chapter 1. Yeah. And we have also finished chapter 6. So now the second chapter, yeah. The vital points of dependent origination. So if you have not clued into it yet, you should know that dependent origination is an important concept that Kyoba Rinpoche uses again and again. Yeah? And in those translated teachings that we've been working on, you see that also. Again and again, he will talk about dependent origination. So now let's look at the first statement. So generally, people say virtue, non-virtue, and the neutral have been taught as the three alternatives, meaning with regards to karma, with regards to actions, you can classify them into virtue, non-virtue, and neutral. But here, having determined virtue and non-virtue as the two alternatives, there is no neutral action. So again, like in the various sutras and in the various texts, definitely you come across this category of karma called neutral. So you can find, references to neutral. But again, Kyoba Rinpoche's statements are often, it's not that, he contradicts what's there, but he's saying, we need to take a closer look. We need to have a more refined understanding that the Buddha said different things to different people based on that we should understand his intention rather than just picking up his words and trying to fit all his words together. Yeah? In trying to fit all his words together, sometimes we actually miss the intention of those words. So single intention, holistic intention, unified intention, all possible translations of Gongchik, title of this statements, this collection of statements, is emphasizing that, Buddha's intention is behind all the words and even non-words, even the gesture of holding up a flower, which is said the transmission of Zen lineage started when, on the occasion where the Buddha just held up a flower and did not use any words, but that Mahakashapa, one of his chief disciples, in fact, his oldest disciple, oldest in age, smiled. And then it said that the Buddha affected, or the Buddha and Mahakashapa, there was a mind-to-mind transmission. So even without words, right? So whether with or without words, we have to grasp, we have to understand the Buddha's single, unified, holistic intention. So here it is said that when it comes to, when we look more closely, then actions are either virtuous or non-virtuous. There is no neutral. So let's look at Chodra's commentary. All actions that follow the afflicted mind are non-virtuous. To the extent that they are mixed up with the three poisons, they are the reason for non-virtuous results. So Nagarjuna says, the actions that are brought forth by the three poisons, namely desire, hatred, and delusion, are non-virtuous. The actions that are brought forth without desire, hatred, and delusion are virtues. So Nagarjuna tells us, there's two types of causes and bringing two types of results, either happiness or suffering. However, is that not incompatible with what the sutras teach? Namely, that the result for what is only white is happiness, the result for what is only black is suffering, and the result for what is mixed action is mixed. So in fact, there are even some who say not only neutral, but there's also mixed. Yeah? That somehow there are mixed karma. Colloquially, we even say that. So Chodra first addresses this idea of mixed karma. Sometimes we look at something, right? We say, oh yeah, that's a mixed karma. Meaning somehow virtue and non-virtue are blended together into, like if you say virtue is white, non-virtue is black, or virtue is black, non-virtue is white, however you assign these colors, right? Then you think, oh, there is a gray result. So actually here it says, no, there's no gray result. The result is still virtue produces virtue, non-virtue produces, or virtue produces happiness, non-virtue produces suffering. If it looks gray, it's just when you look far, far away. If you have, say, white rice and black rice mixed together, if you look far, far away, it might look like it's gray, But that's just because you're not looking close enough. If you look close enough, you'll see, oh, there are all these grains that are black, there are all these grains that are white. It's just that they're mixed together. Then we think they are mixed, but they're never mixed, even that. Even if you have flour, right? White flour and black flour, if you mix them together, superficially you say, oh, it's gray flour now. But it's not. You take a microscope and you look into it, you see very clearly, White is white, black is black. Virtue, here, happiness, suffering. They might exist very closely together, but they're not mixed. So anyway, here he says, mix means that if one plants, for example, a mixture of barley and peas in the field, one may apply the label mixed barley and peas to this field. But in reality, from barley ripens barley, from peas ripen peas. And apart from that, there is nothing else. You don't get a pea-barley hybrid. Since no mixed result exists, the non-existence of neutral actions is established. So neutral has this connotation, now he explains, of like mixed. So then we think it's neutral. So we think, oh, if I done something negative, I can do something positive and it will neutralize. It's like, no. They will produce results correspondingly. In the Abhidharma Samuccaya, 13 divisions of neutral actions are taught. So he's not, Chodra is not unaware. There are, in fact, like extensive discussion of so-called neutral actions. But, he says, Chodra says, the root is the following. So actually here, Sobish tells us, actually it's 14, not 13. But he says, but the root is this. Apart from virtue and evil, there exists nothing neutral in a karma-producing act. Not to speak of those that do not produce karma. The reason is the following. Even though some texts describe acts that produce neutral karma, there exists no other karma than virtue and evil. And there is nothing arising apart from the results of happiness and suffering. For instance, if a couple has a daughter, if you count the people in that family, there are 3. But if you count genders, there are only 2. By establishing this point by way of many perfect quotations and arguments, we have shown the final intention of the inevitable effectiveness of virtue and non-virtue. However, some say white actions may ripen into black results, and black actions may ripen into white results. This is actually a direct quote from Sakya Pandita. In Sakya Pandita, he actually says this, and he gives examples from the sutras. But Chodra says, such quarreling in clever words often turns perfect quotations around through crooked meanings. Since this is the case, do you take cause and result to be untrue? What is this opinion of yours? You have already spread many wrong tenets in the past. Now think well about such opinions. He's scolding Sakya Pandita. And Sakya Pandita actually said this as a response to Kyopa's statement. He says, you're wrong because I'm going to show that you're wrong, because there are many examples in the sutras that shows that a virtuous action produce a negative result, and a negative action produce a good result. Chodra cannot accept this. Of course, Kyopa Rinpoche will not accept this and say, if that is the case, then cause and effect has been turned upside down. And if cause and result is turned upside down, then there is no path to talk about anymore. And that's why Chodra, suddenly turned into such a, scolding. He doesn't even argue his point anymore. He just scolds. He says, why do you talk like this? Now, Sobish, based on access to many different texts now in the modern period, right? He has access not only to all the Tibetan texts, but he has access to Indian texts, Theravadan texts, Chinese, and all of that. So he gives us his thing. He said 171 on the book. He says, although canonical works do not explicitly mention a third neutral alternative, most of the Abhidharma traditions maintain some unexplained or neutral position that is neither virtuous nor non-virtuous. Smithhausen discusses several occurrences of such a position and provides examples and source references. He mentions that perhaps some or even all Mahasangikas have rejected neutral phenomena. He suspects that this may be due to their defining non-virtuous as a simple negation. Okay, this is, the rest is very complex philosophical arguments. So he's pointing out that, even in the early Buddhist community, people have different opinions about that. But that in no sutra does the Buddha use the vocabulary of neutral. This is developed later in the Abhidharma traditions, like writings of different Indian masters, because they started reading the sutras more extensively, and they found narratives, stories that seems to suggest that there is a neutral karma. But if you want to just look at the sutras themselves and the Vinaya, and not Abhidharma like essays written by later masters, as Sobish points out, you never find the Buddha saying, oh, and then there is neutral. So in that way, to me, it actually vindicates Kyopa Rinpoche's more basic point and say, no, the whole point of even understanding karma and working with karma is to be very clear that if the three poisons are involved, that's what we call non-virtuous. If any of the three poisons, not if, when three poisons come together, even the presence of one of the poisons, that's how we define non-virtue. Yeah, so sometimes people say, oh, it's neutral. And they give examples like, for example, going to sleep. So they say the act of going to sleep is a biological function. So it's neither neutral neither virtue nor non-virtue. Kyopo Rinpoche's way of responding to that will be to say, no. If you went to bed with a virtuous motivation, like I should rest so that I can wake up fresh and continue my practice, benefit others, then that sleep is not neutral. If you went to sleep like, oh, so that I can wake up the next morning and plan this mass murder and plan this like robbery, then it's negative. It's non-virtuous. It's even non-virtuous. Now, this is, bad news, I suppose, like, oh, it's non-virtuous. It's even non-virtuous if it is based on ignorance, which is lack of presence of mind. Oh, I'm just exhausted. Oh, I'm going to sleep, which is what most of us do. That is a form of non-virtue, okay? Yeah, because you're just letting downness take over. But don't ruin your sleep thinking, oh, I need to sleep with virtue and then work too hard on that and then cannot sleep, You have to do it at the level. I always say, the ideal is we need to be clear about. Then our ability to manifest the ideal, we need to also accept, okay? But so we need to recognize, even the body was just exhausted, so you fell asleep, right? From a worldly perspective, you're like, well, there's nothing wrong with that. How can that be bad? But from the perspective of actually becoming a Buddha, that is non-virtuous. Because you're just surrendering to like exhaustion rather than being clear. Like, okay, body is tired now, need to rest so that body and mind can be fresh. Hmm. 172, Chukkidrapa mentions Sakya Pandita's statement of the clear differentiation that white actions may ripen into black results and black actions may ripen into white results. This refers to those who practice virtue but seem to reap suffering, or who practice non-virtue but seem to reap happiness. The Karma Vibhanga Sutta in the Pali Canon has already described such as apparent process. And so now, Sobish uses a Pali source to say, but there the Buddha already said, this is only what is apparent. And this is only what it appears to be to those of you who cannot see how cause and effect work in its minute detail. Only on that basis can you say, someone who is doing virtuous things, see, he's suffering. Oh, someone who is doing negative things, see, he's having a good time. So here, in the Karma Vibhanga Sutta, here the Buddha teaches the existence of four kinds of people. In brief, the evildoer who experiences bad results, the evildoer who experiences good results, the good man who experiences good results, and the good man who experiences bad results. But this is so, so this sutra actually says, but this is so only because some actions will have a delayed and some an accelerated result. Thus, it only appears to the ordinary person as if the perceived action leads to the perceived result. In reality, the perceived result in some cases goes back to an action that was not perceived by the observer. And thus his conclusion about the relationship between the action, the deed, and the perceived result is wrong, is mistaken. Yeah, it only looks like, right? It only looks like someone who is lying and cheating is experiencing, 3 mansions and, 7 vehicles and, getting whatever they want and having a jolly good time. But the fact that this person is having a jolly good time, forget about all the suffering he's actually experiencing that we cannot see. But superficially, if you see that he's having a good time, even if you say, oh yes, indeed he's having a good time, but he's lying, cheating, and stealing from everyone else, his lying, cheating, and stealing will produce the results of lying, cheating, and stealing. Right now, the fact that he's having a good time is the ripening of some other virtuous karma. Yeah? And we need to understand that. The next statement, it's in some ways a further explanation of the first statement. And this also then brings us back to remembering that karma is primarily created by intention, by mind. Before karma manifests on the physical level, it started on the mental level. Yeah. So that we should be clear. It started on the mental level. People claim that several thoughts or different phenomena may arise simultaneously within the mind. That 2 thoughts can be occurring at the same time. But here he says, 2 thoughts cannot occur simultaneously, and 2 minds cannot arise together. Now, it might seem like, oh, what is this point? Like, why does it matter that 2 thoughts cannot arise at the same time? 2 phenomena cannot arise at the same time within your mind. That is always one after another. This is actually related to the last statement, which is, as much as you think, colloquially we say, I have mixed feelings about this. And you think that it's actually side by side, it's not. It's one thought, one feeling following another feeling. Then you jump back to another feeling. The first feeling, I feel good about this, right? Or I feel bad about this. Then immediately you jump back to, I feel good about this. I feel good about this. Oh, then I feel bad about this, right? So because all of this is happening so closely together, then we think in this situation, it's neutral or it's mixed, but it's not. So here in the commentary, short, Chodra says, there's no existence of 2 mental moments in a single person simultaneously. And all phenomena are momentary, as in one moment at a time. Remember, the nickname that the Hindu philosophers give Buddhists are followers of momentary nature, momentarists. We are called momentarists. We call them eternalists. Then modern culture, we call nihilists. So if modern culture will write to criticize us, they should call us the momentarists. So he says, in the system of momentary existence, no 2 moments arise at the same time. It's always one after the other. Therefore, all the many things one must abandon and the antidotes which are cultivated and annihilated in each moment, are such that the later ones arise when the earlier ones have ceased. And this is a hard statement, but keep going. That which one abandons and the means to abandon it do not exist simultaneously. Like something that feels hot and something that feels cold, and like sun and darkness. Now, the main point is this. Virtuous and evil thoughts too do not arise together. Quoting the Srimala Devi Sutra, the virtuous mind is momentary, and the non-virtuous mind is also momentary, as in arising and present for a moment. Moreover, the extensive Prajnaparamita Sutra states, among other things, that the mind cannot see the mind and the two minds cannot arise together. Thus, it is easy to understand. Not so easy to understand, of course, for us. Now, in Sobish's notes, I think it's helpful. He says, some people claim that many thoughts or different phenomena may arise simultaneously. According to the Dorshema, these people say that the number of thoughts that arise in a mental continuum at any given time depends on the number of objects that are perceived. They say, if one perceives one person appearing over the edge of a mountain, one thought arises. If 5, 10, or 100,000 are perceived, that many thoughts arise. Jigten Sumgon, however, maintains that the two thoughts can never occur simultaneously, and two minds cannot arise together in the same person. Therefore, just as heat and cold cannot be felt simultaneously, the thing one must abandon and its antidote, evil and virtue, never arise simultaneously, but always in succession. That's the key point related to the last statement. That hot and cold, by definition, hot is the opposite of cold, cold is the opposite of hot. So they are never together simultaneous so that they can become mixed. They're always distinct. Rinchen Chanchup says that Jigten Sumgon understood this during his practice in the 2-year retreat that followed his 5-year retreat in Echung. So this is like, the point of this is that it's a profound point that he only understood in the last 2 years of his 7 years retreat. So this point, what we can understand is still very surface if we understand. But to directly see how this is so, it comes at a very advanced point. So that's one point that we should take away from this, that even if you can understand this statement, or you think you understand this statement, know that the real significance, the real meaning is something more profound. More kind of like earth-shattering when you get it. And then if you don't get it, you're like, I don't know, then just know that, it's such a subtle point, it's not easy. But the commentary doesn't directly link it with the first statement, but I will suggest that if you link the two, you will see that the second statement is actually kind of further clarifying how there's only virtue or non-virtue, which results in either happiness or suffering. There isn't mixed. And the mechanics of that is explained in the second statement, as in, for something to mix, you need the two to exist at the same time. But no. So in other words, also the implication for like day-to-day life is, you might find yourself in a moment of like feeling worried or sad. If you actively say, I'm going to think of something joyful now, right? Because of our habit, we think, oh, actually, I'm still sad. I'm just like, mixing joyful thoughts into this, but I'm still sad. Then your concept of that will keep you trapped in sad. When in fact, if you turn your mind to something joyful, in that moment, there is only joy. Yeah? That worry don't exist in that moment. So if you understand that and then make a resolve, therefore, for the next moment to be joyful, and the next moment to be joyful, and the next moment to be joyful, then you can undo. Sometimes when we suffer, it's not even the actual suffering that is so oppressive. It's the storyline that we have given it that is the one that keeps dragging us back down. But when we understand that all this is momentary, that you can change the course of your thoughts by replacing it with a joyful moment and a joyful moment and a joyful moment, then when it's become habituated enough, it will seemingly automatically go in the joyful direction. Yeah, this is how I'm able to. I'm sure you might have other ways of appreciating these 2 points. But for me, there is practical implications. As I said, even when the statements seem to be talking about Buddha state, it's not. Already, we say the Buddha state, our concepts cannot reach it, So we're just seemingly talking about the fruit, when in fact we're talking about the path. So today we should end here. Yeah. And we will continue on Friday. Again, those of you who are local, I said I was going to repeat this again, able to do your part to help our temple. Please get in touch with Bill Laity. Larry already volunteered. I know Larry, I can always count on. I appreciate that, to take care of the temple. So Larry, I know, is going to go over and survey that and see what can be done. I think it's more watching out for like the next big rain, which we're getting more hurricane. We don't get the hurricane, we get the remnants of the hurricane, then more rain. And that is, I think, when we need to go look. And then the cleanup, how we can safely do it. One person cleaning up is kind of hard. So how we can safely do cleanup, as long as 2 people can say, well, basically I have not exposed myself, and then so some coordination is necessary. And I am appealing to those of you who can help to help. It might not be you going there, but you can coordinate. You can, call the troops, so to say, write an email to, work with, work together, in supporting the temple. As I've said, we can all do our parts, and each of us are good at doing different things. So, but then there are some times where, even if we're not good, we can do a little bit, and then we can take care of this. As I've said to others, who are in different places, first priority is take care of your local Dharma center. Don't, take for granted your local Dharma center. That's your primary home. That's also where not just, we should not only think about ourselves. We think that the Dharma center exists so that other people can find the Dharma. So we talk so much about for the sake of all beings, for the sake of all beings. Well, that's where it is. Then having said that, I also want to take this opportunity to recognize and to say that I appreciate. I know who you are, and you probably know that I know. There is a number of you who are far away from Asheville. But since 2-3 years back, you have been given to Urban Dharma as a monthly sustaining member, even though you are far away, maybe never even been to Urban Dharma, or maybe have visited once or twice. I recognize what you are doing, and I want other people to recognize that too, and see that among this group there are people who, as much as I say, first think about your own local Dharma center. Then if that is taken care of, I really appreciate that you're also thinking of Urban Dharma. For that, I can say to you, the less I have to worry about Urban Dharma, the more I can do for others. Of course, Urban Dharma is my primary responsibility, but I also want to say to Urban Dharma, I cannot do everything, and what I can do best is to teach, and I try to do that. And then also for livelihood purposes, I have to keep Tibetan Spirit going, the loan that I have to repay, and then I have to keep my Airbnb going. Don't worry, I'm making sure it's very safe, the people that I do host for Airbnb. So cleaning, preparing, all of that, I have to take care of that. As I'm sure all of you, have all sorts of things you have to take care of. And I'm not blind to that. I'm just saying that we all do our part. Don't just, assume somebody else can do it. So the Lojong teaching said, don't put the weight of a zu, which is a very strong animal that can carry a lot of weight. A zu is a cross between a yak and a cow. They actually crossbreed and produces zu. But the zu is like a mule. It cannot produce small zu. But a zu is said to be very strong. So they say, don't put the load of a zu on an ox. So who is the zu? So you might say, oh, I'm not the zu, In fact, I'm just a puppy, No, you are the zu. But don't put the burden of a zu onto an ox. It will break the ox's back. So hopefully here, in saying this, I'm not putting the load of a zu on an ox. This is not meant to guilt anyone. This is just to remind all of us, all of us have to take responsibility, take ownership of the Dharma activities that is around you, that you're connected to. Please do that. Yeah. So thank you so much. I'll see you all on Friday. Changchu Semcho Rinpoche Mahake Banam Ge Gyuche Ke Ba Nyam Ba Me Pa Yang Gong Ne Gong Du Sure.
Thank you.
Thank
Ah.
you.
Thank you.